Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Raja Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajgacharya Sotra Satri Srimat A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajgacharya Sotra Satri Srimat Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Silahardastakura Ki Jai Prems Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Radha Des Dham Ki Jai Shri Ganga Maya Yamuna Maya Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai Nitai Go Premanande Hari Hari Bol All glory to the Simul Devotees All glory to the Simul Devotees All glory to the Simul Devotees Thank you very much. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Smade Jai Baraka Swami Namani Namacharya Baraya Nidha Kripa Baraya Gokta Damadaya Nagalakram Tarni Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deva Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Satarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we continue to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, and it's called The General History. And today we're discussing chapter 2, Maharaj Nimi meets the 9 Yogendras. Text 37. I'll first do the word for word. It might be a little bit different than on the board. Please repeat. Bhayam Dvitiya Abhiniveshataha Syat Isat Apetasya Viparyayaha Ashmritihi Tat Mayaya Ataha Buddhaha Abhayet Tam Bhaktya Ekaya Isham Guru Devata Atma Bhayam Dvitiya Biniveshata Syat Ishat Apetasya Viparyayo Smriti Tanmaya Yato Buddha Abhayetam Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma bhayang dvitiya biniveshatashyat Ishatapetasya viparyayo smriti Dhanmaya yato buddha abhayetang Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma Bhayang dvitiya biniveshatasyat Ishatapetasya viparyavo smriti Tanmaya yato buddha abhayetang Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma Bhayang dvitiya biniveshatasyat Isatapetasya viparyavo smriti Tanmaya yato buddha abhayetang Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma Bhayang dvitiya biniveshatasyat Isatapetasya viparyayo smriti Tanmaya yato buddha abhayetang Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma Bhayam dvitiya biniveshatasyat Tatapetasya viparyayo smriti Tanmaya yato buddha abhayetang Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma Bhayang dvitiya biniveshatasyat Isatapetasya viparyayo smriti Tanmaya yato buddha abhayetang Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma Bhayang dvitiya biniveshatasyat Isatapetasya viparyayo smriti Tanmaya yato buddha abhayetang Bhaktyeka yesham gurudeva tatma. Thank you very much. Please repeat. Bhayam, fear. Dvitiya, in something seeming to be other than the Lord. Abhiniveshataha, because of absorption. Syat, it will arise. Ishat, from the Supreme Lord. Apetasya, for one who has turned away. Viparyayaha, misidentification. Asmritihi, forgetfulness. Tat, of the Lord. Mayaya, by the illusory energy. Ataha, therefore, Buddha, an intelligent person, Abhajet, should worship fully, Tam, him, Bhaktya, with devotion, Ekaya, unalloyed, Isham, the Lord, Guru Devata Atma, one who sees his own spiritual master as his Lord and very soul. Translation and purport by the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and as his very life and soul. Please repeat. Fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body. Because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and as his very life and soul. Thank you very much. Purport.
That's the whole philosophy.
Yes, it's the whole philosophy. Yeah, it's incredible, this verse. Yeah. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the objection may be raised that since fear is caused by ignorance, it can be dispelled by knowledge, and there is no need to worship the Supreme Lord. The living entity falsely identifies with his material body, family, society, and so on. And he simply has to give up this false identification. Then, what will Maya be able to do? In reply to this argument, Srila Sridhar Swami has quoted the following verse from Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Devi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Durachaya Mam Eva Ye Prapatyante Mayam Etam Tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. The living entity, called Jiva Tattva, is one of the potencies of the Supreme Lord. But the constitutional position of the living entity is tatastha, or marginal. Being minute, every living entity is eternally dependent upon the Supreme Living Entity, Krishna. This is confirmed in the Vedic literature as follows: Nicho Nichanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. Among all the eternally conscious beings, there is one supreme eternal living being who is supplying the needs of all the innumerable others. Katha Upanishad 2.1.12. Krishnadas Kaviraj has stated, Ekala Ishvara Krishna Arasaba Britya. Krishna is the only independent controller. All other living entities depend upon him. CC AD 5.142. Just as the finger is part and parcel of the body, and therefore must always be engaged in bodily service, we, as parts and parcel of Krishna, ma me vangso jiva loke, jiva buddha sanatanaha, have the eternal duty, sanatan dharma, of engaging in the unalloyed service of the Lord. The potency of the Lord that enlightens us in the Lord's service is called Chit Shakti. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that when the living entity develops a spirit of independence, he is forced to come to the material world, where he enters into various types of petty and undesirable behavior that create a fearful situation for him. The Bahiranga Shakti, the illusory potency of the Lord, covers all trace of the Chit Shakti and imposes one material body after another upon the living entity for his gross sinful enjoyment. As further punishment, the living entity who is giving up his loving relationship with Krishna loses all power to perceive the eternal blissful form of the Supreme Lord, who is his actual shelter. Instead, the living entity becomes attached to many temporary phantasmagorical forms, such as his personal body, the bodies of his family members and friends, his nation, his city with its buildings and cars, and innumerable types of ephemeral material scenery. In such a state of gross ignorance, the idea of returning to one's original identity no longer even crosses the mind. By the laws of God, the three modes of material nature are constantly in conflict, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. This conflict is described in many places in the Bhagavatam as guna vyatikaram. When the living entity is bewildered by the interactions of the modes of material nature, he comes to the conclusion of relativity and assumes that God and worship of God are simply byproducts of the relative, contradictory interaction of nature's modes. In the name of anthropological, sociological, or psychological perspective, the living entity falls deeper and deeper into the darkness of materialistic ignorance, dedicating himself to mundane piety, economic development, sense gratification, or speculation, in which he regards the absolute as lacking variety and personality, which he assumes to be products of the interactions of nature's modes. The illusory potency of the Supreme Lord is duratjaya. It is impossible to escape without the direct mercy of Krishna. Mameva ye prapatyante mayam etam tarantite. The example may be given that when the sun is covered by clouds, no man-made apparatus can remove them from the sky. But the sun itself, which created the clouds, can immediately burn away the clouds covering and reveal itself. Similarly, when we become covered by the illusory potency of the Lord, we identify with our temporary material body, and thus we are always in fear and anxiety. But when we surrender to the Lord Himself, He can immediately free us from this illusion. The material world is padam padam yat vipadam. It is dangerous at every step. When a living entity understands that he is not the material body, but an eternal servant of God, his fear is vanquished. As stated by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Atra bhaktai samsara bandhan na betavyam sahi bhaktau pravartamanasya svata eva payati. In this Bhagavad Dharma, devotees have no need to fear the bondage of material existence. That fear goes away of its own accord for one who engages in devotional service. It is important to make clear that bhayam, or fear, cannot ultimately be vanquished simply by impersonal self-realization, as expressed by the words aham brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.12, Narada Muni says to Vyasadeva, Naiskarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate. Mere naiskarmyam, or cessation of material activities and a repudiation of the bodily concept of life, cannot ultimately save one. The living entity must find a superior shelter on the spiritual platform. Otherwise, he will come back to the fearful situation of material existence. That is stated in Shastra. Aruha krichrena parampadam tata patantyado nadritya yushmat angrayaha. Bhagavatam 10-32. Although one may, with great labor and effort, struggle up to the Brahman platform, klesho dikataras tesham avyaktasaktasha tesam avyaktasakta chetasam. If he does not find a suitable shelter, he will come back to the material platform. His so-called liberation is vimukta mana, liberation by imagination. The living entity is by nature pleasure-seeking, anandamaya. Now we are suffering because we are falsely seeking pleasure on the material platform. And as a result, we are becoming entangled in the painful complexities of material existence. But if we try to give up the pleasure-seeking propensity altogether, we shall eventually become frustrated and return to the platform of material pleasure-seeking. Although there is eternal existence on the Brahman platform of impersonal realization, read it again. Although there is eternal existence on the Brahman platform of impersonal realization, there is no Ananda. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. In the Vaikuntha planets, there is actual spiritual Ananda. Krishna is there in his ecstatic spiritual form, surrounded by his blissful associates, all of them eternally full of bliss and knowledge. They have nothing to do with material existence. In the spiritual planets, even the scenery and birds and animals are fully conscious of Krishna and are absorbed in transcendental bliss. Yat katva na nivartante tattama paramam mama. Bhagavad Gita 15.6. One who goes to the blissful spiritual planet of Krishna will be fully satisfied and never come back to the material platform. Therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said, Kim chatra bhaktai samsara bandhan na betavyam. Only the bhakta actually becomes free from fear. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has emphasized the necessity of accepting a bona fide spiritual master who is Vrajendra Nandana Preshta, the dearmost servitor of the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna. The bona fide spiritual master is completely free from envy of other living entities, and therefore he freely distributes knowledge of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the living entities who are inimical to the service of the Lord somehow hear this knowledge submissively, they become free from the illusory potency of the Lord, which has covered them and thrown them into various miserable species of life. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by the mercy of the spiritual master, the faithful disciple gradually realizes the transcendental position of Lord Narayan, who is served with great awe and reverence by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. As the disciple's transcendental knowledge gradually increases, even the Parameshvarya, or supreme opulence of the Lord of Vaikuntha, becomes pale in the light of the beauty of Govinda, Krishna. Govinda has inconceivable potency to enchant and give pleasure, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, the disciple gradually develops his own blissful relationship, Rasa, with Govinda. Having understood the blissful pastimes of Lakshmi Narayan, Sri Sitaram, Rukmini, Dwarkadish, and finally Lord Krishna himself, the purified living entity is given the unique privilege of participating directly in the devotional service of Krishna, who becomes his only object and shelter. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gunave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistang Stapitang Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayang Dadati Swapadantikang Vandehang Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Guru Sri Rupang Sagrajatam Sakana Raganatam Vitam Tang Sajivang Sa Advaitang Sa Vatutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devang Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishvari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, we offer our humble obeisances unto Sri Vyasadev, the author, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Sri Narayan Rishi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nasta presa Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloker Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtakir. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, help me out, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our obeisances to the Bhagavatam and to the person Bhagavat, the Guru, and then we will become purified from almost everything. Sorry, I'm just paraphrasing. Mukam karoti vatshalam pangum lankai te karim yat kripatam ham vande Sri Gurum dinatarinam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Paramananda Madhavam. This Paramananda Madhavam, it's a kind of a secret verse from Sridhar Swami, who is starting the purport. And maybe some devotees think, oh, Sridhar Swami from the Gaudiya Math, Prabhupada's godbrother. No. This Sridhar Swami lived about 800 years ago. And officially he was in the Rudra Sampradaya, that means Shiva. And he actually, that's why this Paramananda Madhavam, the verse that is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, as far as I remember, it's Mukam Karoti Vatshalam, Pangum Langayate Karim, Yat Kripatam Aham Vande, Paramananda Madhavam. So Paramananda, that was actually his guru. And Madhavam is Madhu. It's Gopinath, Krishna. So it was kind of a secret, because he made these purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This particular purport, we're reading the beginning from Sridhar Swami. And Paramananda was actually in the Madhva Sampradaya, what I understood. So he was kind of on a secret mission. He studied the Bhagavatam in Varanasi. And my understanding is that was kind of the Bhagavatam of Madhva Acharya. The Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, that's where you are now. You're in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya. Sometimes we forget this Madhva, we should not forget this Madhva. Madhva Acharya, he actually started this Sampradaya in a way, because you have Vyasadeva, and then we have, of course, Krishna, Brahma, Vyasadeva, Narada Muni, and then Madhvacharya. Narada Muni, then Vyasadeva, then Madhvacharya, and then there is this long list in the Bhagavad Gita of all these acharyas that you probably never heard of. Those are all disciples of Madhvacharya, and they were all living in South India, and they were protecting the knowledge, this Srimad Bhagavatam. The same Srimad Bhagavatam that Sridhar Swami was reading in Varanasi together with his guru. And when he came to Jagannath Puri, he was with the Mayavadis, the Shaivites, who are basically Mayavadis, which is what we are talking about in this purport. Oh, you can just become one with Brahman and all your fear will be gone. And there's a long purport not only of Sridhar Swami, but also of Bhaktisiddhanta. That this is, of course, and we know this, of course, not possible. But the point I wanted to make, and Sridhar Swami lived about 800 years ago, maybe a little bit, maybe 700. Madhva was 800, Sridhar Swami was maybe 100 years after that, something like that. And so I want to make the point that that he was in the Rudra Sampradaya in Jagannath Puri, because those were the only people that were there. They owned the libraries, the Rudras, basically Mayavadis. They had all the libraries. That's where he was studying, and they were basically ruling Jagannath Puri. So Maharaj had basically no choice. It was like a secret mission. Every acharya has a special mission. Of course, now we have Srila Prabhupada. He's the founder and acharya of this mission. So he's the acharya of ISKCON. There's not going to be another acharya. And if there is, then he has to submit to Srila Prabhupada. That's the mission of Srila Prabhupada. But Sridhar Swami's mission was a little bit more like secretive, and as we know, we should know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very, very much enamored by Sridhar Swami's purports, and he in fact said that anybody that was 500 years ago, anybody that is studying Srimad Bhagavatam and is not, I don't know exactly the words he used, respecting the words, the purports of Sridhar Swami, he said he's like a prostitute. He's going outside of the Sampradaya. He's just roaming around, going here and there with different gurus. No, you have to submit to Sridhar Swami. And what I also wanted to discuss in this lecture is about Madhvacharya, because Sridhar Swami was most definitely, in my opinion, in my understanding, in the Madhva Sampradaya. Even though he was officially, and still is, in the Rudra Sampradaya. And Madhva, he is famous for saying you have God and you have the soul. And they're two different things. So Madhvacharya, he was really preaching against this kind of Mayavad, that it's all one. Please take a cushion, please. Welcome, thank you for coming. So, yeah, he was very, very adamant against this, it's all one. So Madhva, he established, no, you have God and you have the soul. And one of the very specific things Madhvacharya taught us, that the soul is either in Maya or in Krishna consciousness. There is no in-between. Yeah, the in-between is us. We are the in-between. We are the Tatastha Shakti. We are the Shakti that can either leave Krishna, or we don't really leave Krishna. We think we leave Krishna. That is called illusion. But you know, I asked one time, Yadanandan Swami, I said, yeah, the soul is always transcendental. And it was like a whole discussion. And at the end, Maharaj said, well, you can say it's transcendental, but at the end of the day, you're in Maya. Which is true, we are in Maya. And even though, because Prabhupada says, the soul is always transcendental, but we are confused. We don't think we're transcendental, that's the problem. So anyway, but the point is that we are Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha Shakti is not a place, it's not a geographical place. Tatastha Shakti is designation. We are Tatastha Shakti, and we can either be in Maya or in Krishna. That is up to us. And now we're all trying to connect with Krishna. That is what this whole purport is about. So I just wanted to make that clear, that Sridhar Swami is coming from that. He's coming from that philosophy. Here also he's quoting Nitya Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Banam Yovidadati Kamam. Among all the eternally conscious beings, there is one supreme eternal living being who is supplying the needs of all the innumerable others. So again, he's making the point that you have us, the living entities, and then you have Krishna. And Krishna, or what does it say here? Yeah, the one, it says here, there is one person, Eko, and that Eko is Krishna. And he is supplying everything. So this is from the Kata Upanishad, which is very authoritative. That this is what the Mayavadis were reading. So, you know, in this particular case, because this is from Sridhar Swami's purport, this beginning section. So he was quoting that. Look, it's in the Upanishads, because in those days the Srimad Bhagavatam people were not so much into it, especially in Jagannath Puri, with all the Mayavadis being so prominent. So that's why he was quoting the Upanishads to show them, look, you know, it's in your Shastra, it's in the Upanishads. Yeah, so here also in Sridhar Swami's purport, it said Tata Sta, marginal. That's us. We're the Tata Sta. We're the marginal potency where we can switch, because we're minute. We're weak. That's really what it comes down to. We are weak. We can get influenced. That's why this Krishna conscious philosophy is so powerful. Because we say, oh, you're influenced by Maya, this television, that thing, that politics, that. And we say, now put that intelligence that you have and put it to Krishna. We have so many books. The whole Bhagavatam, the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you're finished, Chaitanya Bhagavat. Many might have not studied it, but Prabhupada studied the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Chaitanya Bhagavat was written by Bhaktisiddhanta. These purports are, I mean, amazing. I have no words for them. They're so amazing. And all these purports in Chaitanya Bhagavat, they all have like homework, which reminds me, for the people online, little homework. in the second chapter, this chapter, 11.2, 20 and 21, there you have all the questions of the Nava-yogendras and all the answers with the quotes. So these kind of purports you also find in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And the interesting thing is that Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj quotes these verses. It's like a whole homework. Sometimes he says, you can also find this, and then he says 10 verses of the Bhagavatam. But my opinion is, my understanding is that Prabhupada would actually look that up. There's purports in the Bhagavatam that says, yeah, you can read this in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and then Prabhupada quotes 10 verses. So it's kind of like they're kind of going back and forth. It's just amazing. Anyway, that is just a little side point. But yeah, I wanted to stress this, how important this Sridhar Swami is, and how painstakingly he wrote his purport to explain to us that we are Jiva Tattva and then there is Vishnu Tattva. Those are two completely different things. And that was not, we all know that, but in those days, in Jagannath Puri, that was not very clear. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said everybody has to submit their intelligence to Sridhar Swami and his purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, I'll just go on with the purport. So that is the Sridhar Swami purport. And then we go on with Krishnadas Kaviraj. Of course, he says the same thing. Ekala Ishvara Krishna, Ara Saba Britya. Krishna is the only independent controller. All other living entities depend upon him. So anyway, so that is the intro of this purport. I just wanted to stress that. I also wanted to give a little of an intro of the text. And by the way, before I go on and I miss kind of the point, because the point is fear. Huh? And sometimes they say, don't bury the lead. You know, you have to start with the headline. So the headline is, if you just surrender, it's a bit of a big word, to Srila Prabhupada, who is called Abhay Charanaravinda, and his representatives, then your fear will cease. But if you read the text again, you'll see it's a whole process. This is not, I mean, Prabhupada says it can be done in 1 minute or even 1 second. But, you know, from my experience, I've been studying the books for about 40 years and practicing seriously for 30 years. And I can tell you recently, some progress, I feel really significant progress I've made. So it takes a lot of time, at least for me, you know, and, you know, I've been quite serious. Could have been more serious, but so it takes time. It's a process. Don't be, you know, Rupa Goswami says, nishtaya, daryat, you have to be patient, you have to be determined. This is not overnight. Prabhupada would say, Krishna is not so cheap. So just take your time. There's no rush, but at the same time, don't, you know, despair if you don't make so much advancement. It took me 40 years. And still, actually, because we're going to, hopefully, we have enough time, we're going to discuss about that. When you get a little bit more advanced, then you'll realize more that it's Krishna's mercy. But it becomes an internal thing. It's not just, oh, Krishna's mercy. No, you actually realize that, oh, I can't do anything without Krishna's mercy. I'll just be blooping again without Krishna's mercy. So, but that is more, it's more like an internal thing. And anyway, so before I go into more of the purport, so we're reading here the Nava-yogendras. And believe it or not, but this in 11 to 14, I can look it up for you so that I can give you the perfect Sanskrit. Narada Muni, he says to Vasudev, this discussion is in Dwarka. Of course, the discussion is also between Vyasadeva and, Sukadev Goswami. Well, Vyasadeva also, he's writing it to Ganesh. The discussion between Vyasadeva and Parikshit. And then there is another layer of the Sutta Goswami and the sages in Naimisharanya. So the Bhagavatam, it's quite intricate. And like Krishna says, Raja Gujam, what's that? Raja Vidya, it's the king of knowledge, but it's also the greatest secret. So all these layers are a little bit to confuse people. It just gets confusing. And even here now with the Yogendras, Narada Muni tells Vasudeva, who became a little bit, there's really no other word for it, depressed. He thought, oh, I had Krishna as my son, and I didn't take advantage of it. And, you know, I mean, I think, I'm not quite sure of the timeline, but it might be that maybe Lord Balaram was already left, and or maybe not, but it's just really at the end of the whole Krishna Lila, and Vasudeva, he was just really kind of depressed. And so Narada Muni, he came to Dwaraka, which is a very mystical place, to comfort Vasudeva, and he said, Itihasam Puratanam. This story is very old. Narada Muni, the son of Brahma, he's saying that this is very old. So that means it's old. How old? 2 billion years. This was spoken 2 billion years. I can prove it to you because Rishabdev, these are his sons. And these sons are the great-great-great-grandchildren of Swayambhuva Manu. Now, Swayambhuva Manu is the first Manu of the universe. Not of the universe, that I'll come to that. The first Manu of this day of Lord Brahma. Today is Lord Brahma's birthday. It's his 51st birthday. I'll come to that. I'll come back to that. So, Swayambhuva Manu is the first Manu of this day of Lord Brahma. And every day has 14 Manus. We are now in the 7th Manu, Vaivashvata Manu. That is in Bhagavad Gita. Ikshvaku, Vaivashvata in the 4th chapter. Right? He's talking about Evam Parampara Praptam. This Parampara, I was just talking about the Parampara. So it was given by Vaivashvata Manu. That is in the beginning of this Manu. So after every Manu, there is a pralaya, a destruction. So it's a well, call it a minor destruction. It's a minor destruction. It kind of floods the Bhumandala. That's how it's explained. The Bhumandala gets flooded. Nothing else really, but that means the whole world is just flooded. And the Swayambhuva Manu is at the beginning of Brahma's day. And that is a very serious pralaya before that happened, when Brahma is sleeping. And that pralaya is when Lord Sankarshan, who is at the bottom of the universe, and he becomes angry that the conditioned souls didn't do their best at the end of Lord Brahma. Still they're there. And he becomes angry, and from him expands 11 Rudras, 11 Shivas. And Ananta says, it's a little confusing, but my understanding is that you have Sankarshan, and actually Sankarshan is right here in Radhadesh. You might not have noticed, but that deity that you see in the round thing, you have Varadev, you have Nrsingadev, and you have Sankarshan. Because if you look carefully, it's these ladies, and they're worshipping him, and they're kind of, with big breasts, and they have kind of like snakes around them. These ladies are the wives of the Nagas, who are living in Patalaloka, which is at the bottom of this universe. And so Sankarshan, he lives there. But there is also Anantashesh, which is kind of an expansion of Sankarshan, which is the snake, the unlimited snake form. And so that snake, he burns the whole universe. Not the whole universe. It gets burned. The Bila Svarka, you can read it in the 5th canto, that is the heavenly subterranean planets that we usually call the hellish planets, but technically are not hellish planets. Hellish planets are all the way down in the universe. That's where Yamaraj lives. That is also where Pitri Loka is. And anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little distracted by all these technical terms. But what I wanted to say, that before Swayambhuva Manu, Anantashesh burns the universe, and it gets burned up to the highest planets. Like we say in the Gayatri, Om, Bur, Bhuvak, Swa. So Bhuvak is the kind of the intermediate, and then Svargaloka is the heavenly planet. So that all gets burned. All the 3 worlds get burned up to Maharloka. Maharloka doesn't get burned, but the people have to go to Janaloka, if I get it correct. They flee there, all the way up in the universe. And that's where they're all kind of, you could say unrespectfully chilling out while Brahma is sleeping. And that is what Swayambhuva Manu was dealing with. So there was nothing left after the day of Brahma. Everybody died. So he came to the Bhumandala and he populated the earth. And so, there was also a king and he created the 7 oceans. You can all read it, I think, in the 4th canto or in the 5th canto. I'm not sure. And 5th also, yeah. And anyway, so the Navyogendras, they are grandsons of Swayambhuva Manu. And so it has to be in that era, because every Manu, there is another pralaya. So you can take it to the bank. This was 2 billion years ago. This mantra that we just sang, 2 billion year old mantra. I just want you to know, this is not some fairy tale what we're reading. This is Garantaraj. This is the greatest book. Like I said, Raja Gujam, Raja Vijay. It's not just Bhagavad Gita, it's also the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is even more secretive. What to speak of Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya Bhagavatam. So this is very, very secretive. Anyway, just to give you an idea of what's going on. And so these Navyogendras, they are talking to King Nimi, who was doing a big yagya. And so he immediately understood, here's the Navyogendras, the sons of Rishabdev, and he stopped everything. And he asked them this question, like basically the same question that Pariksit asked Sukadev Goswami, like, what is the best thing that you can do in life, especially in his case, because I'm almost dying, so what should I do? And he was saying, you should surrender to Krishna. What Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you should hear about Krishna. So that is what this Kavi, I think, the first Navyogendra, so everyone will answer a different question. And so this is what he's answering in this verse. The whole philosophy is in this verse. Okay, so I'm running out of time. Want to discuss a few more points of the purport. I think I'm going to just skip most of the purport because it's just simply too long. And most of the purport is kind of clear cut, except the end. The end is a little. It's the Guru Tattva. So then we're always kind of struggling with that Guru Tattva, at least. We are. It's just there's just no two ways about it. So I'm going to skip the rest of the purport. You can study it later. So what is important about this last paragraph, that is basically written by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is that just again, I don't want to bury the lead. So the headline of the purport is that, and this is from Rupa Goswami, that we should always worship Krishna, and you can see today, in the Vaikuntha mood. In other words, Rupa Goswami says, even if you're most advanced, like we're reading here, you have a rasa with Govinda. Even if you have a rasa with Govinda, you don't want to disturb the so-called neophyte devotees or beginning devotees. So you keep externally in the mood of what Bhaktisiddhanta is saying. Lakshmi Narayan, Sri Sitaram, Rukmini Dwarkadish. But internally, you become a lover of Krishna. But like you can see with Radha Gopinath, they're dressed in the Vaikuntha mood. You see, with Mukut, like a king. So that is very, very important. Even though that devotee that dressed him, he might be on some high level, he's still maintaining that kind of simple mood. You can't really call it simple, it's Vaikuntha, but it's not as intricate as the Madhurya Rasa, as the higher rasas in Goloka Vrindavan. But that is an internal thing. Which brings me to the Guru Tattva, is because, Bhaktisiddhanta is very, very clear here. I mean, I don't know, it's translated from Bengali, probably by Gopi Paranadana, and then Rinananda Maharaj transcribed it. Govinda's inconceivable potency to enchant and give pleasure, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, the disciple gradually develop his own blissful relationship, Rasa with Govinda. So that needs a little attention. My understanding is that it's an internal thing. So the spiritual master, he gives the knowledge. You could say the Samvit. Samvit means Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. So we are all made, we have a form. The soul has a form. We are not this body, and this is ABC. We're not this body, we are a soul. And according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the soul is situated in the heart. And the soul is, like Krishna, is made of Sat, Chit, Ananda, and it has a form, Vigraha. That is Lord Brahma, he's speaking that in Sri Brahma Samhita. I'm not just making this up. So, and so the Chit, Sat, Chit, so Sat, Chit, Ananda means eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. And Chit means knowledge. So the Guru, Diksha, the Diksha Guru, like my Diksha Guru is Jayapataka Swami, he gives knowledge, divya gyan, transcendental knowledge, not just knowledge, divya gyan. And so that divya gyan, it's this book. It's the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's Bhagavad Gita. And so we need to not only understand that knowledge, which is not, it's not rocket science, as I say, it's just Raja Gujam, Raja Vijay. It's the king of knowledge, and it's the king of secrets. It just means surrender to Krishna. Like Prabhupada was once asked, what does it mean to be humble? Prabhupada said, just be humble. It's not that difficult. You know, of course, in my opinion, and my understanding, real humility means to follow the orders of the spiritual master, to serve. So, and that is part of what I'm saying. The spiritual master is giving the samvit, but we need to act on it. It's not enough to just understand, oh, I have to surrender to Krishna. Oh, I took initiation from the Guru. No, now we have to act on this knowledge. What is this knowledge? You're a servant of the servant of the servant of Govinda. Servant means that you serve. That's what we're all doing here. We're all serving Radha Gopinath. We're serving Ekachakra Gram Prabhu. The president, he's the representative of the GBC. The GBC is the representative of Srila Prabhupada. And so, and my guru works under the GBC. That's how Prabhupada set it up. He's basically a teacher. And if the teacher has some problem, could call him, if you want to be a little bit esoteric, could call him an ambassador. If the ambassador has some problems, he's relieved from his duty. And then we'll put another ambassador, or we'll just put, you know, whoever is there in the building, who is now the ambassador. In other words, the representative of the king or of the minister of that country. So the guru, he is the representative of, well, you could actually say of the GBC, of Prabhupada, of the Parampara. And so he is giving that knowledge. And once that knowledge is given, basically the understanding is, once you take initiation, you understood, I need to surrender to Krishna. Because you did. You're bowing down. I mean, unfortunately, it's only men. No, we have one female guru, actually. Hold on. We have one female Diksha guru in ISKCON. She's not allowed to have any more disciples at the moment, but she has 2 disciples, Narayani, Devidasi. So we have one female Diksha guru. And so that female Diksha guru, or that Diksha guru, he's you're bowing down to a grown man. Like, I come from Amsterdam. You have this, we would always joke with my friend. He was like a fighter, you know, and you know, this was many years ago. We were a little in Maya, and we would watch Vin Diesel. And there's this movie, and Vin Diesel says, I bow down to no man. And we would always say that to each other, you know, I bow down. And that's what you do when you submit to the guru. You bow down to a grown man. It is not so easy to do that, especially when I'm from Amsterdam. It wasn't easy, but you have to do that. And so when you do that, then it's understood, you understood the essence of Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, that you surrender to the Guru. And it's that surrender that is important. And then, of course, you need to act on it. You need to study the books, and then slowly, That's what Bhaktisiddhanta says. This is very, very intimate knowledge that I'm giving you. This is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, first canto, fourth chapter, 56, 57, somewhere around that. The Samvit will connect, not the Samvit will connect, the Ladini Shakti will connect with the Samvit. Ladini is the Ananda, and that is basically Radharani. So the internal potency, the Ladini Shakti, will connect with the Samvit Shakti. And that is what we're talking about here in this purport. It's not just I don't want to say boring Vaikuntha, but we have to go from this Samvit knowledge that, I'm not a body, and Brahman, the great Brahman, that is all good, but it's not enough. So then that has to go to Vaikuntha, to Rukmini Dwarkadish. And then when you understand this knowledge, this surrender to Krishna, then the Ladini Shakti, it will come into your heart, into your mind. But this is what I was talking about. I'm not on that level, just no confusion, I'm just glad that I'm kind of a little bit past this Anartha-nivritti, and I can fall down any second. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not fully. It's not that I have no more anarthas. I still have plenty anarthas. But when you get to the higher levels, then this Ladini, it connects with the Samvit. And that's what Bhaktisiddhanta is talking about. That is the mercy of the Guru. Because the Guru ultimately is Krishna. So it's an eternal, internal thing. So I once, and then I'll wrap up, I once wrote a scripture when I was 18 between the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and Plato's Politeia, which is, it talks about the soul. Socrates is talking about the soul. And to understand the soul, he is giving this idea of the society. So he's talking about, he doesn't use these terms, but Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana. And I wrote a scripture, and I asked my teacher, why didn't I get a 10? He said, yeah, because you didn't criticize your own, because I said it's similar. It's either some truth that is out there that Plato and Socrates were connecting to, or, which is what I actually think, they were reading Bhagavad Gita or some Vedic knowledge they had access to in Greece. And so I asked him, why didn't I get a 10? He said, yeah, you didn't criticize your premise. So you have to criticize what I just said, then you should criticize it. But I just don't feel like it. I didn't feel like it then. There's also no more time. And I just don't want to go too much in that whole quagmire. You just have to take my word for it. And if you want, you can ask a question, I might address it. But there's 5 more minutes on the clock, so I think I'm gonna leave it there. So thank you very much. If there's any questions or comments, please. Yes, please. Can you use the mic for the outside audience, the online audience?
Two technical questions. Rudra Sampradaya, I had the impression that it was a Vaishnava Sampradaya, but you said that they're Mayavadis?
Well, yeah, that was a very little controversial that I said. Thank you for bringing it up. I'm not sure. You're right. Of course, the Rudra Sampradaya is a Vaishnava Sampradaya. That is correct. But, practically, when you go, I'm talking about 800 years ago, 700 years ago, when you go in Jagannath Puri, many of these mutts were basically Mayavadis. And you have to understand, the Lord Shiva, it's like that. It's very impersonal. It's about meditation. We know Shiva is a Vaishnava, but maybe they are not completely clear on it. Sridhar Swami was clear on it. He's an Acharya. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, everybody has to read Sridhar Swami. You cannot step over his purports. So in that sense, you're absolutely right. The Rudra Sampradaya is a Vaishnava Sampradaya. But it's these things get, when it's on the ground, it gets a little bit more convoluted, a little bit more complicated, because you're dealing with people, and people misunderstand things. So I would say you're right, of course. So thank you for correcting me. It is a Vaishnava
No, I'm not
Sampradaya.
correcting. I was just trying to understand.
Well, no, okay, but it's a very intelligent question, and it was. When I said it, I was like, ooh, 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 ooh. So thank you for allowing me to clarify it. It is definitely a Vaishnava Sampradaya, but when Sridhar Swami was in that Sampradaya, he was actually from the Madhva Sampradaya, which is the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. In the Siksha, he was in that Sampradaya. He took sannyas from the Rudra Sampradaya.
Okay.
So, like I said, when it comes in the really practical, what actually happened, it's a little more convoluted, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many of his teachings, he was promoting, like, not against Mayavad, but he was putting he was putting Mayavads down, and also all the Gaudiya line is also about, Mayavads, it's like demons, etc. Then why did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exactly take sannyas from a Mayavad?
Yeah.
Or because we can see things like that, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that a few things are not allowed in Kali Yuga. One of them is take sannyas, and we see that makes sense by the history of, So why did he take sannyas then?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, first of all, actually, it's good you brought it up because I wanted to say another point that came up a few days ago. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, correct me if I'm wrong, Madhavendra Puri was his guru, no? Or was it Ishvara Puri? Ishvara Puri, who was the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So there was some confusion that Madhavendra Puri is a tree in the spiritual world, but he's actually not really a tree. He's a Kalpa Vriksha. And what I understood, Madhavendra Puri is the Kalpa Vriksha where Radha and Krishna are sitting under. Maybe not every night, but basically. And so he, like you have what are they called? The Gopis, the Manjaris. They are in the intimate pastimes. They say that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a Manjari. And so, but they sometimes have to go and get some betel nuts, but the tree is always there. 24/7, the tree sees everything, and he gives the fruits. So that is just a side note, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took from that tree, from Madhavendra Puri. But like I said with Sridhar Swami, when you go on the ground, Jagannath Puri, I mean, I've been in Jagannath Puri. I love Jagannath Puri, don't get me wrong. I'm a little bit upset. I'm not allowed to go to the temple. I think it's wrong. And this, anyway, I don't want to say anything more, but so, Jagannath Puri, it's an intense place. And that's where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was most of the time. Now, he took sannyas like Sridhar Swami, not like Sridhar, I think Sridhar Swami might have taken sannyas in Puri, but he took sannyas in Varanasi, where Sridhar Swami also was. So I'm trying to explain to you that, Sridhar Swami was like 600 years ago, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was 500 years ago. It's not that things changed that much, like I'm referring to my previous answer. So there were a lot of the Mayavadis were basically ruling India.
So no Vaishnav sannyasis to give sannyas to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?
No, absolutely not. No, that is later. I mean, I don't know exactly so much the history, but you had, of course, the 6 Goswamis. Then you had Baladev Vidyabhushana, who, by the way, before I forget, he also said you need to nourish. You need to nourish this. And so the nourishment is by this reading. So anyway, to cut a long story short, then you have Jagannath Das Babaji and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was dealing with all the sahajas. Sahaja means taking it cheap. People were just having sex in Radha Kund and all kinds of weird things. So Maharaj Bhaktivinoda, he was kind of trying to hold the line. That is also one point we all need to hold the line. Sometimes we think, there's not so many people in Radha. Okay, but you all that are here, hold the line. Like I gave you now a nice lecture, you keep this lecture in your heart. You hold the line. And so that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. You see, he was just holding the line. And then Bhaktisiddhanta, and this is also a little bit controversial, he actually took sannyas from a picture of Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Because even in his time, there was not really anybody qualified to give Maharaj sannyas. And he did not want to take sannyas from a Mayavad Sampradaya. And so Bhaktisiddhanta actually started this whole sannyas thing to kind of establish the Vaishnava Sampradaya, the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya as a similar powerful Sampradaya on par, that means equal with the so-called Mayavadis. So it's a very, I don't want to call it controversial, but it's just a very difficult subject in the sense that things weren't so clear in those days. You see, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in order to preach, nobody would have listened to him unless he would have taken sannyas. So it was an emergency. And so when Prabhupada gave this sannyas, he said, there is actually, that is not in the Veda base, but it's in the memory tapes, that one disciple, he said that Prabhupada told him that I just gave, what was it? Like wartime sannyas. And if you know, Prabhupada was from before the First World War, so he saw the First World War. And said, and because the Second World War was a little bit convoluted, it was very chaotic, but the First World War, it was very clear. You were in the trench and then you had to lead the charge. So Prabhupada says, I needed someone to lead the charge. And that was the wartime sannyas. And Prabhupada said, I know some of them will not make it. So that is an answer to your question, why all these sannyasis are falling down. Because now, I was just listening to Prananda Maharaj. He is the sannyas minister and also part of the guru, I don't know what it's called. They kind of deal with these things. But he said that now their guru, he said guru is very easy actually to become guru in ISKCON. But sannyas, not so much. Sannyas is minimum 40 and you have to do all kinds of examens. Then you get another sannyasi or senior devotee. He reports back to Maharaj Prananda and the committee. And you're on a list. He says sometimes the list is usually 5 years. He says sometimes we're not moving the person up. So after 1 year, he's not going to 4. He's still, and then people just leave. They're just like, what is this? And so now it's more strict. And he said, Maharaj Prananda, that we have, since we started doing it, we have less fall downs. Like much less than before. So when Prabhupada was giving, then that is my answer. That was a wartime sannyas for the preaching. So that would be my answer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
So would you say that at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there was very little Vaishnavas?
Yes.
And
yes.
sannyas was not existing, no, Vaishnav sannyas?
No, my understanding is there was no Vaishnav sannyas. It was basically started by Bhaktisiddhanta, Vaishnav sannyas.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it was started by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but then it went down again. Like I told you with Bhakti Vinod Thakur, it was again after the Goswamis, it became again a mess.
What about previously to that?
That's what I was explaining. Previously to that, it was Madhvacharya, and before that, no, wait, sorry, Madhvacharya is like 2,000 years ago, I believe. No, let me get this straight. No, Madhvacharya is 800 years ago. And so the gurus that you see to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that is like 200-300 years of gurus. But Madhva is directly from Vyasadeva. Madhva is a very special, he is the incarnation of Vayu, of Hanuman. Madhva is not an ordinary guru or acharya. So it kind of starts from Madhva, and then you have all these gurus, you can look it up in the Bhagavad Gita, all these names that you probably don't know. Those are all disciples of Madhva. They were mostly in South India. And then from there came Madhavendra Puri, Ishvara Puri, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
They were all sannyas?
No, they were not, well, I don't know actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think most of them were actually sannyas. I think they actually were sannyas, but how it exactly worked, I'm not quite sure. I have to look into that. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a little obscure part of our Sampradaya. Yeah.
I just had a question because the term Ladini Shakti and Samvit Shakti were new to me. So if you could maybe briefly explain what is that?
Yeah, I must admit they're also a little bit new to me. Like I said, you can look it up in the first Adi Lila, chapter 4, like text 55, then there it's explained. And it's the same as Satchit Ananda. So you have Sandini. Samvit, and Ladini. So it's kind of like Sat Chit Ananda. It's kind of like the philosophical and it's kind of like the elements. Like you have the elements, earth, water, fire, air. So it's kind of like that. And then the Samvit or the Sanvit, which is the Sat, and the Samvit, which is the knowledge. And the Ladini is kind of the Shakti of those things, Sat Chit Ananda. So Sat is, I think, Sandini.
Existence.
Yeah, Sat is existence, Sandini. Then Chit is knowledge, that is Samvit. And then Ananda is bliss, that is the Ladini. And so the Ladini, that is called also the internal Shakti, which is basically Radharani. That means devotional service. Sometimes people say Bhakti. That is Bhakti, Ladini. But Prabhupada translates Bhakti as devotional service. And that is always to the Guru. So, yeah, it is very important. Tat vidi pranipatena, pariprasnena sevya, upadiksanti tekena, gyaninas tattva darshana. Bhagavad Gita 4:34. You try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, because he has seen the truth. Tattva darshana. So that is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. That surrender, that Krishna says, oh, you have to surrender. What is that? Sarva dharma prityagyam mamekam salam. That surrender has to take place with the spiritual master. Not like, I'm going to surrender to Krishna. No, you have to surrender to the representative of Krishna. You cannot overstep. You cannot go directly. To whatever, the president of America or the president of India. You have to go to the secretary. You cannot just call up the president of India. It doesn't work like that. It's the same with Krishna. Except with Krishna, it's all about love. Yeah, so it's a little technical. So yeah, you have some homework. I should also study it more. So it's in the 4th chapter of the Adi Lila. Yeah. Okay, I think came to the natural end. Thank you so much for your attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Garantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.